Chaps, I don't usually do these videos now, largely because they don't really seem to get any views for about 6 months. So the anniversary videos kind of cease to be important, but we will be doing one or two or three for the Bismarck in a month's time and the invasion of Russia. I will add my 10 pence to all the books that will be coming out by then, because I think Jonathan Dimbleby's just done one. Anyway, this video is a short one about Prince Philip. I'm sure by now anyone watching this has had enough, but it seemed only relevant that, considering the content of this channel, 80% of it anyway, is sort of history and royalty related in some way, that we mark it. Now, I was in London with my brother past Wednesday into Friday, and as I was on the train or tube somewhere, I got a message from my mum saying Prince Philip had died, and it was shocking and sad and everything else. People were like, well, he was 99, he was a very old man, you know, he looked like he'd death warmed up and all this other stuff, but it was still kind of sad and shocking because you've known this person, albeit from afar, not personally, all your life. As somebody said in one of the papers on Saturday, anyone under the age of 35, which at the moment I still am, only have known the Duke of Edinburgh as an old man. And indeed it's the same with the Queen, you know, although when I was born she was just past 60, which is quite young nowadays really, isn't it? Not old. And also he was part of this generation that fought in the war, and I was mentioning it online to the one person that cared. 2 weeks ago was the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Cape Matapan, where a Royal Navy force significantly gave the Italians a bloody nose, managed to sink something like 5 or 6 ships with no loss of their own, and something like only about 5 killed in the entire task force compared to the hundreds that the Italians lost, and it more or less made the Italians stay in their ports, or at least get nervous, the idea of coming out. And I believe it was the first naval battle for almost solely using radar. And during the Battle of Cape Matapan, Prince Philip was on the bridge of HMS Valiant, which was one of our big ships that we scrapped after the war. That I believe it was a Valiant that ran aground when she was leaving Portsmouth Harbour on her way to the breakers, as if to say, no, I'm not going. But he was operating a searchlight and had the good fortune to turn it and illuminated this Italian cruiser, which they promptly dispatched in a matter of minutes, and he was mentioned in dispatches, which is kind of funny that since Friday, Prince Philip has been called a Nazi. He fought the Nazis, and his mother, during the war, hid Jews in Greece and became was recognised by Israel when Israel was formed as rightful among nations. That's what Nazis do, apparently. And that's the trouble. Prince Philip, as the Times and Telegraph say, because I don't read any others, unfortunately, not unless they're the only paper going, mentioned these so-called gaffes and whatever. And, you know, we have to remember that Prince Philip was a man of his time. I'm not excusing it, but, you know, my nan, one of the sweetest ladies you ever know, used certain expressions for certain colours, and, you know, I am of my generation, so I might say things when I'm older, if I ever have kids, or my brothers have children, then those children might go, well, that's not right. He was an incredibly humorous man. Not everyone liked his sense of humour. He was a man of great, that generation had a great sense of duty. Didn't matter if he was a member of royalty, but you know, he said you've got to do right for your country and your family. And the end job is that when he became what we call the consort, as to say, the husband/wife of our king or queen, he effectively lost much of what he appreciated. He was on the 30. He could have, you know, everyone expected the king to last a few more years. He was only 56 when he died, and the Duke of Edinburgh, as he became, expected to have a little longer in the Royal Navy and gain command and all the rest of it, and he had to give that up. And indeed it was him who broke the news in Kenya in 1952 to the Queen, as she became that night, that her father had died. and you know, everything changed for her and him, of course. By that point, Prince Charles and Princess Anne were already along, and then came Andrew, of course, and Edward, and indeed Edward is now going to become Duke of Edinburgh, which is kind of curious when you think about it. But Prince Philip was a great man of public service, a great man of charity, one of the first to take climate change very seriously in the 1960s, before it even became a word, really. And a man who would be fairly embarrassed at all the attention given to him since Friday. There was a little bit of uproar on Twitter, as there so often is, because Twitter is 90% a slag heap of disrespect, that all the channels, apart from Channel 4, just gave up and focused on the Duke. Now, the BBC, I could kind of understand BBC One doing it. They did when Diana died, but of course that was before 24-hour news. BBC Two initially went the same way when Diana did, and I remember they started showing fishing programmes or something. Well, you know what, I can understand people being frustrated, but you know, back then when Diana died, you didn't have Freeview and all the other bits and pieces, and if you wanted Sky and that, you had to have a dish and whatever, and we didn't, so you were stuck with BBC 1, 2, 3 and 4. I think Channel 5 was coming along at that point, and you may do, and we had VHSs that we watched. Friday, when I got back from London, you know, I've done what I've done since the first lockdown started. I've watched things off YouTube, My5, all for the iPlayer, you know, it's there. Now, some people say, well, I'm mainly complaining because about old people. You know, so be it. It's one day of your life, you know. It's like when somebody I knew in 2012 was complaining that the Olympic cycle ride was going to cause all this problem, and you know, why does it have to come through here? Well, it's one day, and it's the bloody Olympics. So, you know, if you can't pull up with something for a day, then I think you need to look at yourself. And of course, Twitter's just full of nastiness, as I say. I do take umbrage, as I say, with him being described as a Nazi. Some left-leaning woman, can't remember if she's from Momentum or not, said something about he's a biggest benefit claimant or something. With the Duke's passing, there's rumbling, even the Times was saying that there's some sort that when the Queen turns 95, which is in fact in a week or so, she will hand over to Charles, or at least power. Now, British history and English history is what it is. This is the first time a consort has died of a reigning one since Prince Albert, 170 odd years ago. The Queen and Prince Philip were the longest ever married royal couple at 73 years, and by association he was the longest ever royal consort. But as far as handing over of power goes, in recent history, the 1810s, when Prince George, the oldest son of George III, was named Prince Regent, and he effectively reigned as king until George III died in 1820. Even then, George IV only reigned as king for 10 years. There was talk a few years ago, the Queen invoking the Regency Act of 1935, I think the paper said, and all the rest of it. The Queen won't abdicate. You know, people are saying she's too old and Charles is too old to become king. You know, people forget that Edward VII, 100 odd years ago, became king in his 60s and only reigned for 9 years. We've had monarchs throughout history, ever since the Conqueror, that have either reigned for a year and then bitten the big bullet, or whatever, and lasted not too long on the throne, or reigned in old age for only a month or something stupid. Edward VIII is a glaring exception, because it was one of the most fantastic moments in the monarchy since 1649, when Charles I lost his head. I think personally the Queen will keep going until she dies, as is the way of things, and Charles will become king, and if he reigns 5 years or 20 years, so be it. I don't see why he should just skip to Prince William, because Prince William is apparently quite popular and handsome to the younger crowd. it's not how it works. And then the thing is, there's a book about Prince Charles said, is that most people have only known the Queen as a monarch. You know, my grandparents, God rest their souls, had at least 3 monarchs in their life, and the abdication crisis in the middle of it. My brothers, my mum and dad, my aunties and uncles, all have only known the Queen. So people are saying when the Queen dies, there'll be some kind of uproar because no one has remembered what it's like to change monarchs fairly frequently. There was a story that when Queen Victoria died, and they were doing the coronation, getting ready for the coronation of Edward VII, her oldest, that they had actually forgotten how to do a coronation, like the specifics. So they actually introduced things into the coronation of Edward VII that were subsequently involved in the coronations of George V, George VI, and Elizabeth II. So there you go. As I say, you know, there's been such an outpouring of grief that a lot of things have been doing specials about the Duke. The Times of, but that was the Sunday Times. This is the Saturday paper. They haven't done one of these wraparounds since the Olympics, or when Andy Murray last won Wimbledon. This supplement, that's about 10 pages long, is their obituary. And usually the obituary page in the Times is at least 2, if not 3 pages. The Telegraph is a broadsheet. So, you know, I mean, history. I went to the Palace on Friday because I was in London. I've never seen the flag at half-mast in person before. There were flowers taking shape at the gates. There was news crews away to my right in the fans by the gates of Green Park and all the rest of it. And it was quite moving, really. And quite suffering to think that it was history being made. People bemoan, besmirch the monarchy. Why do we have it in the 21st century? Well, times like this, royal weddings, royal babies, Prince Harry and Meghan, everyone just pours in and unites in some way. Look at the crowds at the royal wedding in 2011 when they came down the Mall after that with one police officer marshalling them, or the Queen's 50th year in 2002 when they had that big concert by the Palace and everyone pulled up. For better or for worse, they are good for this country. We don't give, as a public, we don't give them as much money as we used to. People living today are quite lucky. Look at what happened with Charles I. Henry VIII was quite demanding of his public. So I think losing a day of television, blanket news coverage, is a small price to pay. Let's remember Prince Philip on Saturday, even if for a minute. And let's think of the Queen who has lost her soulmate, who she knew for just over 80 years. I don't know about you chaps, but if I'd lost somebody I'd loved that long, that I was inseparable from really for that long, and they died before me, and I saw some of what was being written about them online, I would be more than devastated. So rest in peace, Prince Philip.